Board of Trustees, beyond the work that Kristen described around the D-Stream framework and the continuing efforts for staff, we've got our layout of our certificate for French as a second language. You'll notice some of it is site-based decision making, some of it's not, including the courses that would be offered as part of those 10. It's front-loaded to capture 5 to 6 compulsory credits in grades 9 and 10, which then frees up more options for students who want a certificate, but also want to take other specialization in grades 11 and 12. And you'll see the totals of how those numbers add up to extended or immersion, including the participation in the Diplôme d'études en langue française, the DELF examination, very, very impactful. Our specialist high skills major programs is about 3 dozen in total across our schools. And the definition for the programs for SHSM comprised of a bundle of 8 to 10 courses in a selected sector, offered and operationalized for grades 11 and 12, with the potential to earn industry certification. So beyond the FSL certification, we could have industry certifications in a specific specialist high skills major. And last but not least, our focus programs, Osprey and Tamarack, respectively, and a definition for that, comprised of a minimum of 3 interrelated courses offered and operationalized as a bundle in grades 11 or 12. These definitions are very important so that we as an organization quite literally avoid our staff naming various courses, programs, and or services across the system. And that's something we really want to stress with our staff, that we really want to do what we've got here really, really well, showcase it well, promise it to the public, deliver on it to the public, and that will undoubtedly increase the public confidence the public has in what we're offering as programs. The note really captures that all other compulsory elective courses offered and operationalized lead to an OSSD, an OSSC, or a certificate of accomplishment, and that there's really no other programs other than what's on these pages. Pages 5 and 6 look at course selections and that process, which differ to a certain extent in the past. We're going to be much more mindful, especially in the spirit of de-streaming, around students who choose applied and academic programming going into grade 10. Page 7 it's a little bit of a screenshot, but at least it tells people where to go to find page 61 of the Ontario Schools document to see what's required to graduate versus what's not, what's elective. And then pages 8, 9, and 10 really do a school-by-school analysis of what's offered. The courses in the chart on page 8, it's a little bit awkward because there's an array of courses each school offers, but what we've got there is the 16 or so subjects or disciplines recognized by the provincial government in the sector of education. From the arts through to technological education, that's it. That's the entirety of what we offer. The note at the right-hand side says there is the opportunity to do interdisciplinary studies, which is a combination of courses and skills, knowledge that students may require, all working together to serve personalized and individualized objectives on the part of students. And that's very helpful in some of our schools. But really, that's the totality of the subjects we cover at the secondary level in the province of Ontario and in our districts. Page 9, apologize for going through quickly, but page 9 describes, it's really a continuation of the elementary document. It shows which students in which schools transition into high school, where the immersion programs were, whether they were early or middle immersion, and also includes for Deep River and Madawaska Family Schools, respectively, the start of grade 9 French immersion at MCS for September 2024, and for MV, it's September 2025, respectively. So that's a bit of a timeline sheet, very valuable. And then page 10 is the school-by-school analysis for SHSM, where each of those SHSM fall based on the school, with the inclusion of the focus programs in the note on the right-hand side. Page 11 gives us a little bit of an overview of the technology we're distributing to both secondary students, of course, 9 to 12, but also grades 7s and 8s. And then a series of frequently asked questions around pages 12 to 14, which mirrors, again, what we had in the elementary document. As a final comment for the Board of Trustees, and I'll open it up to questions, there are 2 other versions of this document forthcoming. one around adult and continuing education, which we will put together once we've done the formal review of adult and continuing education through Superintendent Cousineau next school year. So a fourth document on the other end of secondary, and likely an early years childcare document on the front end before elementary as time goes on with the ministries and actually the federal government's changes in the regulation for childcare and the fees that will likely have sort of bookend documents beyond the K-12 that you see before you here, which will form 4 parts of a comprehensive pre-K to success vision for the district coming up next year and the year after that, respectively. So that's the tentative plan. Happy to answer any questions.
Okay, questions, comments? We've seen a fair bit of this before over the last several months, right? So I don't think it's a surprise to anybody, but it is nice to have it in a comprehensive document that anybody can refer to. And this has gone out to staff now.
It's gone out to staff today.
Perfect. And it will be on the website?
No, not as is. So
Okay.
there's a few issues. First of all, we don't want to put out information that's out of date, and as Pino said, it's timestamped, so this was accurate when it came out, but some of the information isn't accurate as is. We are working on a family of schools documents, which breaks this down in a more manageable way for the public. And it's nicely laid out and has pictures and all that, and it lists the programs. It doesn't have some of the detail that we might want in this, and so we might have a separate document that kind of explains, takes some of these elements as well. But if we do want to upload these, then the work needs to be done to make sure that it's A, accurate, and B, there's certain things like programs that haven't been ministry approved yet, but we're in the works and feeling confident that we've shared with staff, but we couldn't publicly.
To Meredith's point, this is pretty much an internal document.
Mhm.
Even some of the acronyms the public wouldn't understand fully. We'd have to explain it. So it's for, a number of our internal folks. I think Connie Mass, Dunway, when they get questions around when a program's starting, it's for their reference. Meredith will work on the public facing pieces of these. And the same will apply for those other 2 forthcoming. There'll be a sort of an internal version for professionals and then another one for the public that will be more aesthetically pleasing. Some of this is a little on the dry side, but it's all there for us. And trustees and staff will understand that the public will have really a more appealing version.
Well, and more to the point and to the essence of your question is we have a marketing plan that is really beyond these documents. And so we are looking at it from several perspectives. So this within the system, and that's this. And then there is our parents, our students, our community stakeholders, other government leaders, and the media. And so for each one of those, we have different takes on how we're going to do it. From press releases, we're looking at things like bookmarks for libraries. And so lots of creative ideas. It's not fully formed yet, but we are certainly going to make sure that when we reach out to the community and share the wonderful news of all the things that are happening, that we do it in a way that's appropriate for each target group.
Yeah. Any questions or comments? I just had one more, I guess, thinking of that marketing piece, Meredith.
Mhm.
Do we have some timelines on that? Approximate timelines?
We do have, the first timeline was getting this out to the system. And I think what we know is it's important to respect is, of course, right, the trustees and the system. And so that they're not reading about things in the media and whatnot. But the timelines are actually quite tight because what I feel, and I know colleagues agree, is that we have, a limited time right now where people are choosing what high schools their kids are going to be enrolling in next year. And we want to let them know that if you come to our high schools, these are some of the wonderful programs. We're going to have French immersion is going to be available for the kids that are continuing on in it. And that also the one-to-one Chromebook, that is something that's going to be like from grade 7 to 12. So we have 3 main pieces that we're focusing on: the Chromebooks, the FSL, and then also the D-Stream. And with the D-Stream, what we want to do is frame it in a positive light, because we know that some people have hesitation towards it. So we want to explain why this is the way it's, and even though this is not just something for our board. So to answer the question, we do have timelines. We're hoping that we can start rolling some of this out, like what we have started today, but next week and then in the coming weeks. And we don't want this to, to lose the momentum but the first step obviously needed to be to tell the system.
Right.
Yeah.
I like the idea of the family of schools piece because as a parent, that's really what you want, right?
Yeah.
You don't care about another school. I want to
Exactly.
know what's happening. So I think that makes a lot of sense. Okay, great. Thank you very much. That's awesome. Okay, nice to see that come to fruition, that's for sure. And mid-year update regarding work plan for staff. Trina, we'll leave that to you as well.
Thank you, through you, Madam Chair. This is an update mid-year, as mentioned, regarding the work plan for staff for the current school year in support of our mission of working together to foster outstanding educational experiences. You'll see in the attachment provided to the Board of Trustees through the strategic plan at the board meeting of September 28th of 2021. Senior staff has created a refreshed template for the operation and improvement plans developed and implemented annually in support of our strategic priorities and goal statements of the current multi-year strategic plan. A number of the system level action plans associated with the multi-year strategic plan, as noted on page 15 of our strategic plan, provide an overview of the annual work we do in relation to one another and operationalized by corporate services, employee services, program services, and special services. This mid-year update of the work plan for staff, as you'll see in the attachment, really just provides on the right-hand side a status of where we are, what's been completed, what's not yet started, what's ongoing well beyond this current school year. So there are some actions that are multi-year and keep going, and there are some that are just in progress and look to be completed by the end of the school year. Of note, key activities and events, initiatives, and/or projects that have been completed at the midway point of the current school year include the consultative sessions at the secondary school sites as part of the Renfrew Secondary, as you all know, the completion and public release of our gender identity and gender expression guidelines, the collection and analysis of student and family demographic data as part of our equity-related endeavors, the coordination of capital projects for the current school year, and most recently, support for the Ontario Winter Games across the county, including involvement in each of our secondary sites. A year-end update regarding the work plan for staff will be provided in June 2023, and happy to have myself or a member of the senior team answer any questions you might have about the current work plans. And just a quick note shout out here to Meredith, who's begun her work in public affairs and communications that has a few other things that have started to evolve that weren't on the initial plan of September 28th that we provided here, that are just going to be a work in progress as we get into next fall. And then Meredith will be able to shape that element of the work that she's leading more accurately. So it doesn't fully reflect all of what's happening in the public affairs area, but we wanted to stay consistent with our work plan here so that we weren't providing you a document in February that didn't look like the one we provided in September, and the same will apply in June.
Great, thank you very much. Any questions or comments? Looks like we're making progress in lots of areas, perhaps more so working on the last couple of years with COVID being
Yes.
difficult to make some progress, and it's always nice to see some completed. But a lot of these, as you say, are kind of in progress and ongoing too, which is a continuation of. So great work being done, that's for sure. Question about that. Lots of work and great work being done. So appreciate the update, and we'll look forward to the final one in June. If there aren't any other questions or comments. Okay. School excursion request, Renfrew District High School. Kristen, I guess I'll pass this one off to you, please, if you could lead us through that one.
Sure. So our Prior District High School, this is a proposed trip through EF Educational Tours for March 2024. It's to Venice, the Alp, Paris, and London. This year on the trip, Arm Prior are going to Greece and Italy. They have 66 students who are going, so that's why they anticipate anywhere from between 36 to 72 students. So all costs for this trip, it is a 10-day excursion, so there is an additional excursion on this to London. So the total cost is $5,175, but that includes every single detail in terms of gratuity for all the hosts, the bus drivers, cost of bus to Montreal, all the tipping that's required as well. It does include all meals with the exception of lunch, but includes the hotel and all of the tickets to go to museums, churches, and other important sites. So this is, I'm bringing it forward today because it is hopes that they can go next March, but it's really important that they start, to spark student interest soon. I did speak to the teacher who is organizing it. It's Lydia Pritchard from Arm Prior. And we did talk about the importance of equity and accessibility for this trip. Director Buffoni and I also met with EF Tours a couple of weeks ago to bring that up as well. And it certainly is something that is on their radar. I do want to read just a couple of things that Ms. Pritchard has done to help raise funds for the trip that's happening this year. And she plans to do the same fundraising and such for next year's trip. So one thing that's really, really important to note is EF does have approximately, I think it's 50 different kind of bursaries that students in need can apply for. So that's through their home school, and there can be application for that. And Ms. Pritchard was actually successful in getting 2 paid trips for students from lower socioeconomic households to pay. There are 2 students who were huge, just have a really big presence in the high school in terms of doing a lot of volunteer work, school spirit, and involved in clubs and such. So she was able to secure 2 really fully paid educational excursions for these students. And that's something that Director Buffoni and I also spoke about when we met with EF a few weeks ago. She also has done 2 significant fundraising. She did a citrus fundraising initiative, which raised quite a bit of money, as well as a pie fundraiser as well. But one thing that was really important, she said almost the majority of students who are going basically have saved money for the trip through part-time jobs. She even broke it down, how much would be required per student per week to save for a trip like this. But the majority of the students who are going this year, and it's 66 who are going, it's actually they've saved the money through part-time jobs to save for it. And that's part of the importance of trips being approved, well in advance, so that students can do that.
Great. Thanks very much, Kristen. Does anybody have any questions about this trip? It looks amazing. I think we all just want to go. But what a great opportunity for these students. And it's nice to hear that 66 are going this year as well. So it's wonderful. Jody, you have a question?
Yep, and it's just on the equity and inclusivity piece. Thank you very much for answering a lot of the questions that I had. I think that's really great, that this is a lens that we're exploring opportunities through. With regard to the fundraising that they're doing, have they considered maybe front loading the fundraising so that, for example, the first 6 or 12,000 would go to 2 further students being able to attend, and then the other fundraising lowering the cost for the rest of the students? In other words, using the fundraising to create more spots.
That's a really good question. I'm not sure. I know usually with fundraising, it's just to take off cost for the collective whole. That because I don't know, with confidentiality with students and such. So it's a question certainly that we could discuss, but it is something we're working with EF Tours on a number of fronts to discuss issues of equity and opportunity. And like it was a 2-hour meeting that we had, and certainly we will follow up with them. But that your point is one that I can certainly bring back and discuss with the school. I did want to note as well that the Armprior Optimist Club also made a donation towards busing costs for the students to get to the airport in Montreal.
Nice. Very nice. Thank you. Dave.
I'm just curious how the ratio of, staff or adults that have to be with the trip tour. I know that it's only Lydia showing here as a supervisor. What would the ratio be as number of kids per supervisor?
So there are 6 adults who are going on this trip. So with international trips, it's usually 1 to 10. Or it can be 1 to 8, 1 to 10, 1 to 12 ratio for trips abroad, but it is 6 staff who are going.
And they're subsidized? Their trip is paid for?
I know I'd have to double check that. I know in the past when I've done these trips, it just depended on the number of students, that ratio in terms of which staff were covered. So I would have to get back to you. Obviously, some staff will have the trip covered, but I don't know if it's all of them. I know in the past with staff that I've gone with that some have paid a portion of the cost.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? All right, so we need a motion to approve this trip for the Armprior District High School students for March of 2024. I think we'll allow Trustee Doherty to make that motion, since this is her family of schools. And do I have a seconder? I'll take Trustee Morris. Thank you. All in favor of supporting this trip? And that is carried. Excellent. Thank you for all of it.
Thank you.
Yay. That's great. That's great. Okay, I think that brings us to the end of our agenda in a pretty timely fashion. We even have like 15 minutes to wait for board, so that's a real bonus. Thank you very much for all your great discussion, great presentations, good comments all around. Happy that we could have a few people virtually, and I'm hoping I don't forget to call on you. So please, shout at me if I do forget sometimes. So thank you for that. And with that, I look for a motion to adjourn. Trustee Gannett and Trustee Primo, all those in favor of adjournment. And we are adjourned. We'll see you at 4:00. Thank you. Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to to our board meeting this afternoon, February the 28th. Hard to believe it's almost the end of, it is the end of February. Looking forward to March. Thanks everybody for being here today. I would like to start the meeting today with a territorial acknowledgement. We acknowledge that the land on which our school and district buildings are situated is the traditional, unceded, and unsurrendered territory of the Algonquin people. We also recognize the enduring presence of all First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples on the land on which we gather here today. I also have the privilege of doing the invocation today. We do rotate this around our trustee table, and today it's my turn. So you'll just remain seated and we'll go through this one as well. May we who are assembled here have a true understanding of the duties that are placed in our hands. We seek to have the wisdom to honor our obligations to the good of the residents of Renfrew County, to the parents, teachers, electors, and especially our students. May those who teach be ever inspired by goodness, and may the wisdom and knowledge which they impart to our students ever serve as a beacon to lighten their way. As trustees and administrators, we will work together with integrity, perseverance, and respect to the fulfillment of the trust bestowed upon us. We do have regrets today from Trustee Kaiser and Trustee Bolin, and we have Trustee Doherty, I believe, online, as well as our student trustees, Novosedlik and Beggs. So welcome to all of those who are with us today. I do need a motion to approve our agenda. Trustee Morris, thank you. And a seconder, Trustee Dobson. All those in favor of the agenda today? Thank you very much. Are there any conflicts of interest based on our agenda today? Seeing none, we'll proceed. The minutes of January the 24th meeting, I believe, were circulated some time ago. Are there, I need a motion to approve the minutes of the January 24th meeting. Trustee Gannett, thank you. And seconded by Trustee Doherty. Thank you very much. Any questions or concerns around the minutes from January 24th? Seeing none, all those in favor of approval of those minutes? And that's carried. Thank you very much. So today we have a very interesting presentation, and I know we're looking forward to it very much. It's always nice to hear more about this aspect of what we do here at the board. And I will turn it over to Superintendent Kuzno to introduce our speaker today.
Thank you, Susan. Good afternoon, everyone. So over the change in portfolios, I became in charge of adult and continuing education. So it's been a steep learning curve for me. Very fortunate to work with Anne, who will take us through the presentation today. And I'm asking that you keep in mind, almost like today is a bit of establishing a baseline in our understanding of what we are currently doing as a district and adult and con ed in 2023, because as has been mentioned before, we will be engaging in a full program review in the next school year. So that today's allowing us to understand where we're at, what is the current state of adult and con ed, and then we will have the program review. And at some point during that program review, we will be bringing feedback and recommendations to the Board of Trustees at that time next year. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to Anne. And I do want to point out that this is one of the many portfolios that Anne oversees for us.
Thanks, Renald. Good afternoon. Thanks for having me here. And as Renald mentioned, it's been a steep learning curve for me this year as well, jumping out of a regular high school and into adult and continuing ed. So this adult and continuing education, what do we actually do, has been a good way for me. It's kind of like my culminating task so far in my learning. This is what I've learned so far this school year. So let's see if I can make my mouse work. There we go. So continuing education has 4 kind of program pieces that are part of the whole. We have an international language for elementary students, and that's in Mandarin and at Deep River. We have English as a second language for newcomer adults. We have our literacy basic skills non-credit program, and then we have our high school credits. So helping me deliver all of those pieces, we have a co-op and student success teacher who works county-wide. That's Bonnie Bishop. We have 1 ESL instructor for the county, Lana Johnson. And then we have our LBS coordinator for the whole county, Melissa Frisk. And then we have each of our 4 continuing education sites. So each site has a half-time secretary. So in Petawawa, that's Molly. And then each site has a credit teacher. Catherine Hildebrandt is in Petawawa at the beginning of the week, and then she shifts to Pembroke at the end of the week. And then we have Jennifer Coleman Davidson is our LBS instructor at Petawawa. In Pembroke, we have Janet Mick, who is in my office as an office assistant for continuing education and elementary virtual school and any other little pieces that I need help with. Letitia is our office assistant that does our registrations for our Pembroke site. Catherine, I mentioned, we have 2 dedicated LBS instructors in Pembroke. Pam Hawthorne does in-person learning, and Susie Rotker does our e-learning LBS out of Pembroke. And then Annette Kinslow does our LBS instructor developmental program. That's Monday and Wednesday in Pembroke, and you will see her again when we get to Arnprior because she also does it there on Mondays and Wednesdays. In Renfrew, we have our office assistant Jessica, our credit teacher Stacy, and 2 LBS instructors, Melanie and Julie. And then in Arnprior, Gail Flick, who has been the backbone of continuing education with Janet Mick since long before I ever thought about being a principal. Darcy O'Brien is our credit teacher, Senya Vandenberg, our LBS instructor, and then Annette is there Tuesdays and Thursdays with her developmental program. So just a quick overview of each of the sections of continuing education. So as I mentioned, we do have a Mandarin class that runs out of Mackenzie Community School. It's on 2 evenings a week after school. And Alice Wendland is our instructor. And I went up for a visit, as you can see, early in the fall. And I learned how to count in Mandarin. Please do not ask me to do that right now. I'm a good student. I learned it for the day and impressed my peers and my instructor, and now it's gone out of my head. But it was wonderful to see the students are learning how to write the Chinese characters. The writing you can see there, the left-hand side is actually the numbers where they were counting in Mandarin, and the right-hand side is a poem. And they've sent me a Christmas decorations in Mandarin. They sent me a Lunar New Year crafts that they made. I got to go visit them again and see what else they can send me. Our English as a second language for newcomers is actually not funded through the Ministry of Education. It's funded through the Ministry of Labor, Immigration Training, and Skills Development. Try to say that 3 times fast. It's 2 days a week in Mary Street in Pembroke and 1 day a week right now in Arnprior. That is a growth area for sure. We'll speak more about that when we are looking kind of to the future. We just received feedback from the Ministry of Labor, etc., saying that we exceeded the provincial average and goal because 76% of our learners who attended at least 200 hours of instruction increased at least 1 language skill level in their measurement system, which is PBLA. The last part is language assessment. So it's portfolio based. The biggest challenge we have in ESL at the moment is the same challenge that we have across the province, and that is that we have a waiting list for assessments. So we have people who would qualify for ESL in the county who we cannot service because you cannot enroll them in an ESL class until they've had an assessment. And our assessment center is in Ottawa. We're working to try and get more online assessments for those folks that, you know, if you're in Deep River, you're not going to be driving to Ottawa as a newcomer to have that language assessment. And we're also working with the local immigration partnership to determine our current needs and predict future areas of growth. I met with them last week just to kind of look at where we are so far and how they could maybe help us do an environmental scan and figure out which communities we're going to need more ESL in. When I was speaking to the staff about speaking today, Susan and Brian can attest, having been here when we did the Rethink at Secondary meeting with the Con Ed staff. They are very passionate about continuing education and the parts of it that they represent. So Lana was speaking with her learners about their why. Why is it that they're enrolling in ESL to try and improve their English? So they provided all of these really compelling reasons that, you know, English is so important for them to improve. I mean, this one about my son has special needs and I need to be able to speak to his teacher and educational assistant and doctors in English, makes it clear that this is definitely a need. Of course, we do have barriers for our learners, as newcomers especially. Transportation is a huge one because we can only offer the program in limited communities across the county. Transportation to and from is very difficult for many of our learners. Childcare is often a barrier. And then, I don't know if I can learn right now because I've got all these other things on my mind. Part of my family are still not here in Canada. I've wrenched my child out of their community, away from their friends, and they don't speak English here. So, Lana creates really great, a great community with her learners. And so they're happy to share with her how it is that they came to be here and why it is that English is so important to them and what their barriers are. Literacy Basic Skills is also funded through the Ministry of Labor, Immigration, Training, and Skills Development. We offer it at all 4 Con Ed sites in the county. And the program has some flexibility to meet the needs of that community because it is non-credit. So we have literacy and math skill development just for those who want to improve those skills. There's educational upgrading for military personnel. We have a number of people in Petawawa and at least one in Renfrew who are studying through LBS to write the Canadian Forces Aptitude Test. That's how they can move their way through the ranks. We do computer skills for the workforce. We have people in that program in Pembroke, Renfrew, and Arnprior. We have our program for adults with developmental disabilities in Pembroke and Arnprior. And the LBS instructors also help assist people who want to come back to get their OSSD, get ready to write tests that are called PLAR, Previous Learning, Assessment, and Recognition. The Ministry of Labor is looking at ways to modernize the LBS program. There are some things about it right now that are quite rigid. Everyone has to do a test or an assessment to get into it. They're what they call benchmarks they have to report on constantly. So they are looking at ways to try and update and modernize it. And one of the ways they're doing that is they've asked for literacy service providers to put forward pilots that address a need in your community based on Better Jobs Ontario, workplace literacy, or underrepresented groups. And RCDSB has put forward 4 pilot project proposals that we don't know right now if any of them or all of them might be funded. So we do have a Better Jobs Ontario proposal. That's based on readiness to learn in partnership with the employment services agencies in Renfrew County. So looking at who of their clients are ready to actually get back to education. There's a workplace literacy proposal with one of the manufacturing employers in the county to work with them and their employees that need improved literacy for their workplace. We have 2 underrepresented groups proposals, one for workplace literacy and customer service for immigrant women in Arnprior. If you visit the Arnprior site most days, that's who's attending our ESL class there on Monday, and that's who's in LBS the rest of the week, continuing to work on their literacy. And then our other underrepresented group, we'll have a pilot to look at preparing adults with mild intellectual disabilities for the workforce. So the program for adults with developmental disabilities as I mentioned, it runs out of Pembroke and Arnprior. And if I click on this link, I'm gonna have to reshare. And so I think I'll just leave it at that for now. It's in the presentation. That is what has gone out to the high schools in the areas where the program runs, so that the special education departments there, when they're having their transition meetings for our learners who are aging out of our programs, know that this might be an option for them. I also presented it at Coordinated Access last week, so that our community partners are aware that we have this in Arnprior and Pembroke. And so we're just kind of looking for ways to make sure that those communities know that this is an option for adults with developmental disabilities. Because it's run through LBS, there is a requirement that the individual needs to be able to do that initial assessment when they join LBS. But then they can work at a modified level. So I am going to click on this one because it's worth it. This is what our students in the modified LBS program told us why their program is important to them. And it's been a bit fun for me because some of these current LBS modified students were my students when I was the vice principal at Fellows. So I know Jesse from back in my Fellows days, and he's now comes to our Pembroke site. And then you can see there, Jesse's provided us with a little bit of information about himself and what he thinks success is. And then we have Brett, who is also a character who is at Fellows that I'm sure Mike remembers well. He was off on a southern holiday, and he was going to miss some days at the program, and he was texting the instructors like, "What am I missing? Is anybody there? Hey, what am I missing? Because I'm in the airport and I'm kind of bored. Is there anything I can be?" He is a character. Lydia was also just starting at Fellows when I left. She's now working at Bright Eyes and Bushy Tails part-time, and then attends at Pembroke site as well. And you can see we've got quite an age range in that group of folks. Those guys in their 20s up to. I thought this was lovely. Success to me is advocating for people with disabilities, being independent as much as I can, continue to learn and grow at school, in my community, and in life. And then I just threw this in here at the last minute because we had Wellness Day on Wednesday last week during senior admin, and the art teacher from RCI, Natalie Stevens, who is amazing, brought 3 of her students from Renfrew up to Pembroke and did an art class with the group in Pembroke. So there they are with their masterpieces. And she texted me this at the end of the day with the just, wow, like the talent, some of the talent she can get out of people as an art teacher is absolutely incredible. So that's the end of our non-credit piece. As you can see, when you think you're going to become the principal of adult and continuing ed, this is the piece that you think about. You don't realize you're getting all that other stuff and different ministries, and But here we are. So high school credit. It also has two schools. Renfrew County Adult Day School, which is semestered. We have e-learning and PDF courses, and students must complete work each week and stay in communication with their teachers because it is attendance-based. Our other register or school is Renfrew Alternative Learning, and those are courses that can run all the way from September to June. And they're offered only by PDF or print booklet mostly. And the funding is based on students completing lessons. So there's no attendance necessary. A student can take home a booklet in September, put it on a shelf, remember that it's there in November, dust it off, and hand in their first 5 lessons, and they're still in the course. And then if they complete those first 5 lessons, we get funded for those 5 lessons. If they forget about it again and don't do anything until June, then we only get funded for those 5 lessons. They could re-register the following September, and they could start again at lesson 6. And then if they completed 6 to 20, we'd then get funded for 6 to 20. The trick with this register, of course, is if they don't complete any lessons, we don't get any funding. So we offer a lot of courses for a spot with only 3 teachers teaching these courses. So we offer 9 math courses, 8 science courses, 7 English courses, 5 social science courses, 1 geography, 2 guidance, and a phys ed. So the 3 teachers, they may not have a whole lot of students, but they have a lot of balls in the air to keep all of those courses organized. Other credit things that we offer. I spoke briefly about previous learning assessment and recognition. So there are 2 types of PLAR. There's junior PLAR for grade 9 and 10 credits. So that's for those folks that didn't finish those first 2 years of high school with their 16 credits. They can write a test in English, math, science, geography, and history, depending on which credits they're missing, and then be granted up to 16 grade 9 and 10 credits. Senior PLAR is for work and life experience. So there's an application process. You tell me about all of the volunteer things you've done, your work experience, your life experience, if you're a parent, if you've dealt with health issues and had to navigate the medical world, all of those kind of things. And then I have to go through it and decide, does this learning that you've done as an adult in the world match any Ontario curriculum? And if it does, then I can grant up to 10 credits for senior credits. So a student could come to continuing education as someone over 18, never having done any credits in high school, write the 5 PLAR tests and get 16 credits, complete a senior PLAR application with supporting documentation, get 10 credits, and have 26 of their credits toward their OSSD before they actually do a full 110-hour credit. We also offer cooperative education that's delivered through the day school, and that's Bonnie Bishop. She does that from Deep River to Barry's Bay to Arnprior. And then we also support high school students who are on SAL or are in special circumstances that need a course. We usually deliver that as a PDF or print course through the alternate learning school. Those courses that we do offer to high school students has gone through a bit of a change due to the changes in the curriculum with the de-streamed new curriculum. So right now, we're only able to offer grade 9 English and geography. Next year, we won't be able to offer grade 9 English because there'll be a new curriculum and we won't have the materials. So that's a project at the moment to try and figure out what can we offer that we could find the resources to support. We have grade 10 applied English, math, history, and science. And then we also have grade 11 and 12 adult courses that high school students can also access. So as I said, when I was speaking to the staff about coming here, they had a lot of things that they wanted to share. So I've really had to pare it down and narrow it down for, kind of the broad strokes and the overview. So we do have a number of students who have completed or are completing college and university prerequisites and are applying or have already started in January after finishing their courses in semester 1. We've had graduates already this year. I actually have a diploma and transcript in my bag to take to Renfrew to one of my friends who couldn't get through RCI to cross the stage in June. And she's done it. So I have her transcript and her diploma ready to go to drop off in Renfrew. So, I mean, there's various reasons. The staff are noting that our students this year are younger than they have seen in the past, a lot more 18 and 19-year-olds. And I think we can all know that the pandemic has impacted, that age group's learning. And I think that's going to continue to be an area of growth. Just to highlight that because our coterminous board does not have adult and continuing education, once they're done there, they often shake their hand them a transcript with however many credits and say you should go across town and see Renfrew County District School Board. They can set you up with adults ed. And then there's an updated PLAR process that just came out last February, a new PPM 132, and it now allows some students who are still in our high schools to get the PLAR credits that I was speaking about earlier. So it used to be that you had to be already 18 and out of school for a year before you qualified to do PLAR. And that was a frustration for those of us who were in the high schools because we'd have this student that we knew if we let them go, we were going to lose them. And they would say, no, we can't sign them up yet because then they won't be able to PLAR. So now you can be turning 18 in the school year and still be in school to be able to PLAR. So we have a number of students, again, who lost credits during the pandemic, who are now actually going to be able to graduate on time with their cohort because they actually were working or looking after their siblings or all those things that people were doing during the pandemic that wasn't getting them credits at the time, but we've now been able to give them PLAR credits. And two different staff members, unbeknownst to each other, sent me this the other day out of the social media world that this is a former student from Petawawa who's been voted Ottawa's best fashion designer. So apparently she was a Petawawa student because her husband was in the military and she'd never bothered to finish high school, went to Petawawa and finished and just kept taking courses and then found her inspiration. That's great. Of course, like all things in education, we do have some challenges. Meeting the needs of all communities in Renfrew County with the four sites, we do have families of schools that we don't directly service. So our Deep River folks work through our Petawawa site at Pineview. Our Cobden and Eganville folks usually work through the Pembroke office. And then Madawaska Valley, we send Bonnie or somebody goes up to check in to see who needs what. But it is a challenge, of course, with our geography to meet all of those needs. There is an increasing need for adult ESL, and we really do not have adequate access to assessment in Renfrew County. And that funding is tied to a grant from the Ministry of Labor, Immigration, Trades and Skills Development that is tied to the previous year's enrollment. So right now, we're working on a budget that's based on who was left and actually attended during the worst of the pandemic. So as those numbers increase, right now we're being a little creative with how we can deliver, but I think we're going to have to continue to do that unless they recognize that we do have a big shift in the number of folks coming to the area, and that we need more funding there. We're going to continue to have the increased need to support high school students due to the ongoing impacts of the pandemic. We have a very large number of students. Those of you who travel to SAL meetings will know that are accessing credits through Con Ed right now. And for some of them, it's working really well and they're having lots of success. But for many others, it's really not the solution. And so I think we're going to have to think creatively about how we do that. And of course, the increased impact of mental health and social concerns. It doesn't stop at 17 and 18. We see those concerns in our adult learners as well. So, as Ronald mentioned, we're going to head into a full review of continuing education next year. Some of the things that I've already kind of started thinking about are those opportunities for ESL and other locations throughout the county. I have heard that there is going to be a potential for proposals to come for the federal version of funding. So that will be something we'll want to look at whether we can do a proposal there to get added support for ESL. Those updated LBS programming through Skills for Success. So whether or not we get any of those pilot project funding. If we do, that will fairly significantly impact our staffing in LBS, and there'll have to be some shifts there as to how we look at that. Our course materials that we deliver our PDF courses through were bought in, I think, 2008. So were developed, however many years previous to that. They were purchased through Durham District School Board. And so they really need to be looked at through that anti-racism, anti-oppression lens to see how can we update these to reflect, all of the changes that have happened in the last few years. I'd like to investigate the possibility of options for some sort of in-person learning for our adult learners. An area that I think is ripe for expansion would be Indigenous Studies and Algonquin language, which does have some specific registers that could be looked at in Con Ed. And as I said, we're going to have to find those innovative ways to support high school students with the de-streaming, the curriculum changes, and the increased need. And that is the end. Okay. Does anybody have any questions from that very fast overview?
Very good. Any questions?
Maybe more of a comment, and that is I really like because I've been in quite a few SALs this year, the updated PLAR. I think that's just really, really key. It's not going to work with all kids, but at least it's an opportunity for some of them to really continue. I like the slide on the 4 pilot test proposals. Really like that. And lastly, I don't know how much longer she's going to be with us, but Bonnie Bishop is a saint in what she does. When I was at Fellows, she really helped with some summer students in co-op that were pretty high-risk kids. She's really got a way to help them. So kudos to Bonnie, and please tell her I said hello. Anyway, those are more comments than questions. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? You two have anything? Brian?
I just want to say that for about 6 or 7 weeks, I held Anne's position when the incumbent was off recovering from surgery, and it was the education of a lifetime. The value of what you do is beyond words. It really is. You'd see people who basically had nowhere to go, didn't have an idea even how, where the start line might be. But adult Con Ed, is lifeline for them. And the work that many of the people that I knew then are still there, like Melissa Pleskin, Bonnie Bishop, and Janet Nick, and Gail Fleck. And they're just an amazing bunch of people. They really are. They work miracles. It's nice to have that lifeline beyond, the institution of the high school. Some people just don't fit. Some people just get it a little bit later in life. There's the opportunity for them. So thank you very much for everything you do. And I really appreciated the presentation.
That's all.
I just had a couple of comments too, and yeah, again, thank you. It's a complicated it's a complicated piece. And I know I've had lots of discussions with Melissa, and I still don't get it all. But anyway, you did help to explain it even better. I need to hear it about 14 more times and I'll probably get it. But it is complicated, funding from various ministries. It's just complicated. I had a couple of quick questions. The Mandarin piece in Deep River. So how did that kind of come to be? Like, it's interesting that we have a group of people that require Mandarin in Deep River.
So they had it pre-pandemic.
Okay.
It was something that the community had. And this, when I was starting to take over in August, Alice came forward and said, I'd like to take over as the instructor of Mandarin if you're going to have it again. I think I have enough students to make it work. So we put out the ad and said, okay, we need this many to make it go. And she said, okay, I'll get that many. And
They've had it a long time. Very cool. Okay, so it's not new. I guess I just hadn't heard about it before.
I think it was one of those really well-kept secrets.
Must be, yeah. But and I noticed you mentioned the Algonquin language would be another area that is certainly, kind of similar in a way,
So
right?
the Mandarin and the Algonquin language for elementary students would be on a similar register. The trick with the Algonquin language, of course, is that it's very hard to find an instructor.
Sure. Yeah, exactly. But you'd also think Mandarin would be difficult to find a teacher. So
Yeah.
so that's.
But I also think as our population of newcomers grows, there may be communities that want their children to continue to learn in their, mother tongue. And that might be an area of growth as well.
Exactly. You described the four proposals that I know have been put in for some funding. Is it fairly significant funding that comes with those, or do you recall?
So basically we've costed it and said how much we think we would need
Okay.
to make it run.
Okay. So hopefully they would honor that. And
So, I think if it's approved, they will grant what we said we needed
asked for. Yeah. So when will you know that?
Probably not until we get to spring budget time eventually.
Yeah. So it's provincial money that's coming.
Yes, this is provincial.
Provincial money. Okay. I know one of the things that we always look at is numbers, right? And I know that the numbers in Con Ed, you can look at the bigger picture, that they are particularly high. But I also understand that we need to recognize that those numbers often relate to the labor market, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if the labor market is strong, which it is right now, there's more jobs than there are people, then people aren't necessarily looking to upgrade. Is that kind of the right way to think about it?
So there's a couple of things. Labor market, yes, because employers can't be as picky about what someone's education is at the moment because they're desperate for workers. They are having a hard time saying you absolutely need to go back and go to school. The other piece is that the pipeline from the employment agencies to Con Ed was broken by the pandemic. And so that procedure is only just starting to get going again. So for example, On Track, all of those kind of employment services groups used to and Ontario Works especially mandate that their clients, if they weren't able to find a job, were in education. And that completely stopped for those 2.5, 3 years. So it's just kind of starting up again. So that's kind of bringing our numbers up. Right now, we have almost as many high school students taking credits with Con Ed as we do adults.
Wow. That's quite telling, isn't it? Okay, any other questions or comments? I think we'll all look forward to having the official review next year and seeing where things need to be reviewed and looked at and how we can continue to provide these wonderful supports to our communities, right?
I think there is ways to make it grow. I think we just need to find them creatively.
And we know we have lots of passionate people that will be glad to tell us how to make it grow, right? So thank you, Anne, so much for coming today. And then you're back. Nice to see you again. Thanks again. Thanks. Anything specific I need to do here? Yeah. All right. He's good. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Anne.
Excellent report. It's good to remind us what that program is all about because it's sort of, it's not on our radar as much as perhaps it should be. So I appreciate that. Next agenda item are committee reports to the board. And so we have committee of the whole open and closed session reports as of February the 28th. And so I guess I will give those since I chaired that meeting. The open session report, basically we met earlier today and we discussed the following items in open session. The Renfrew County District School Board programs, looking at the review of secondary programming, and we went over sort of the final documentation around that. Secondly, the mid-year update regarding work plan for staff for 22-23. And again, a lot of things are well underway, many are completed and lots more in progress. So we'll look forward to another report in June. And of course, the Orange Prairie District High School excursion request for March of 2024. We did approve that one as well. Lovely to hear that where they are going. This always sounds so nice. Anyway, the following recommendation was made that the Renfrew County District School Board approve the excursion request from Orange Prairie District High School in principle to travel to Venice, the Alps, Paris, and London from March 7 to 17, 2024. And I move that the board adopts this report. Do I have a seconder for adopting this report? Trustee Morris, thank you very much. All those in favor of adopting this report? And that is carried. Thank you. Now, the closed session report, we had 3 items in our closed session. First was on the Keys building. Secondly, on Finance and Resources Committee meeting, closed session report from February the 14th, and also discussion on the tri-board virtual schooling option. The following recommendations were made: that the Renfrew County District School Board adopts the closed session report presented on February the 28th, 2023 regarding the Keys building, and that the Renfrew County District School Board receives the closed session report of the Finance and Resources Committee February 14th, 2023. And I move that the board adopts this report. Do I have a seconder? Trustee Gannett, thank you very much. Oh, sorry. Yes, thank you. All those in favor of adopting this report? And that's carried as well. Thank you. Program and Student Achievement Committee open session report of February 14th, and I'll turn that to Trustee Gannett.
Yes, we had 2 items. The first item was the School Effectiveness and Student Success Action Plan at the secondary report. And Kristen Rydell got her group together and gave us a fantastic overview of that report, led by Krista Rakowski, Craig, Jenna, Will, and Shelley. The purpose of the report was just to give the Board of Trustees an overview of the secondary system-wide efforts in support of student achievement, as well as excellence in teaching, learning, and over the course of 22-23 school year. I just wanted, one thing really jumped out at me, and I mentioned this in committees, but right near the end of the report, it says, we are particularly interested in their feelings in regards to a sense of belonging. And I just wanted to stress to the group that working in high school for over 3 decades, some of those students that we lose, there's been still a lot of studies done, and they just, for some reason, don't have that sense of belonging. And I really like to see that in the report. There was no recommendations made for this particular report. And that's basically it in a nutshell. So, Krista, between you and your team, I appreciate at committees giving us this thorough report. Much appreciated. The second item was the school calendar year report that was given by Jenny Smith. She went over it really top to bottom. And there was one recommendation in that report. The recommendation reads that the Renfrew County District School Board submit the proposal, the regular school year calendar for the 23-24 school year for approval by the Ministry of Education. And I would like to have the board adopt this report.
Thank you, Trustee Gannett. Do I have a seconder? Trustee Morris, thank you very much. Any questions or comments on Trustee Gannett's report? Seeing none, all those in favor of adopting this report, and that is carried. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Finance and Resources Committee meeting open session report. Trustee Morris.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. The Finance and Resources Committee met Tuesday, February 14th, Valentine's Day, 2023, to discuss the following items. The RCJTC inclement weather presentation, and I just have to say that that one really, blew my mind. You think that they stick the finger outside. Oh, I guess it's so appropriate that today is snow day. Here we are. But it's a very complicated process. Probably a scientific issue, possibly get this kind of situation. They're up all night over the lesson sort and checking sources all around to figure out what they should do. And it's difficult. Sometimes they're damned if they do, and then you're damned if they don't. Secondly, it was also we had a discussion on Osby, the material student boards,
Insurance.
insurance exchange. A lot of these acronyms here. And we discussed the issue of students driving other students to on excursions or school events somewhere else. It was a very lively discussion, and no recommendations were made. I move adoption of this report.
Thank you, Trustee Morris. So you remove the receipt of this report, seconded by Trustee Dobson. Thank you very much. All those in favor of receiving this report? And that is carried. Thank you. Special Education Advisory Committee meeting open session report February the 15th. And I believe Trustee Gannett is leading the charge on this one.
Thank you. Yes, we met on February 15th. And Brian Morris would be proud to hear that I had very little to say during this report. And usually when I'm at SEAC, I usually say quite a bit. So they were pretty impressed that it was actually about a 45-50 minute meeting. Just a couple of things to note regarding that meeting is one of the things I never realized, and I should have, but we have a Valley Crest in our board, so does the coterminous separate school board. And I never really realized, but it came out of the meeting, that the Catholic board does grades 2 to 5, and we do grades 6, 7, and 8. Just a little tidbit that all the years I worked for the board, I just never really realized who did what grades. So that just sort of came out. One of the things we've got a member of the community that sits with us at meetings, and he's got 3 or 4, special needs kids in his family, Nick. And one of the things that I find him a really good source of genuine information. And one of the things that he was talking about was the fact that the Ontario government can give a maximum of $65,000 to communication disorders assistants to teach certain specialized things to kids. However, he talked about all the pitfalls to be able to appropriately assess that information, that money. And the $65,000 is a lot, sounds like a lot of money, but in many ways it's not. And he was just sort of, you can tell he's frustrated as a parent, genuinely. You'd think, boy, if somebody's getting $65,000 to help my son or daughter, that's a significant amount of money. It's the difficulty through accessing it for speech, language, and other things like that. So I just think that I've been praising and encouraging him to come to the meetings because he really brings a genuine parent perspective for high need students. And I think S.O. Poirier can speak to that too. I think when she sat on that committee, and he continues to come and speak openly. A couple of other agencies that spoke up was the Amy from the PMFRC. She said that it's one of those times a year where there's a lot of people, there's big deployments going on. And some of the workshops that they're doing is the Children's Support Program and Parenting for Separation and Divorce. There were some key things that were happening. Community living, Sarah Tate was basically saying you're doing a March of Dimes, Easter Seal fundraiser and it's for scholarships for pupils with disabilities. And there's a website that people can access. So those are a couple of things that we talked about in the meeting. And I was surprisingly short in that meeting. So it really, I really would say that we're a pretty close group and we can feel really comfortable in the meeting and talking openly and honestly about whatever we need to. That's the conclusion of my report, and I just move that the board receive this report.
Excellent. Thank you. Do I have a seconder to receive this report? Thank you very much, Trustee Morris. All in favor of receiving this report? That's great. I appreciate the update on that and keeping us posted on what's happening there. Next, we'll go on to some updates from a variety of people around the table, and we'll start with Director Tony.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair, as always, there's activities and events I'd like to share with the Board of Trustees. First and foremost, on the 22nd of February, the district celebrated Pink Shirt Day with schools choosing kindness and putting an end to bullying, including a social media campaign on this front by Renfrew Collegiate Institute. As always, the district continues to follow the advice of the Chief Medical Officer of Health and the guidelines for this school year around safety measures related to the coronavirus. Further, the Ontario Winter Games took place. They were a great success, tremendously well received throughout the county, with all 7 secondary sites of the district hosting events and a number of students volunteering their time at these events. Games manager Cindy Burwell was tremendously grateful for the collaboration of students and staff as spectators and/or volunteers in this extraordinary opportunity. And of course, there's a link there to Renfrew County 2023 for all to see details. And last but not least, we've renewed the Indigenous Speaker Series. The RCCDSB, as well as ourselves, have resumed this series for the current school year with 2 sessions scheduled for the month of February. The first held on the 18th of February featuring Cody Coyote. Its insightful session entitled Healing Through Art provided an opportunity to hear this talented artist's perspectives on overcoming bullying, racism, and other life experiences. Through this medium, live music from his albums, Mamawai and Maenagag, were shared with participants that evening. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Great. Thank you very much. You did well on those words. I would have just gone to albums and but good for you.
Yeah.
Looking forward to those series. Actually, I wasn't able to attend the last one. Yes, the 28th. Yeah. I just have a couple of things on the Cheers update. I did want to talk a little bit about the Public Education Symposium, and we will hear more about that under the OPSPA report because Trustee Doherty, Trustee Boland, and I were all there, and we all have a bit of a report to bring forward as well. But it was record attendance this year because it was the first in-person one for 3 years, so it was very exciting. was a really good opportunity to get back together. And about 50% of the trustees who were there were new trustees. And it was really great to see the enthusiasm and questions and connections around the table. It was also fun because what they did ahead of time was they buddied up the new trustees with the returning trustees. And so we made sure we connected with those couple of people at the conference and, made sure we had coffee with them. I had a conversation with them. So just doubly making sure that they felt welcome. So we thought that was a really good idea. Some of you, I don't know if the revised good governance guides have been sent out yet or not. I know hard copies are coming for every trustee. If you don't have them already, they should be on their way. It is also on the website, but it's been revised. It's really an excellent resource if you want to know anything about the role of a trustee. And I know Trustee Dobson earlier mentioned today that he's read it, I think, cover to cover, which is very impressive. Maybe he should give us a lesson on it. But it is an excellent resource for all of us, that's for sure. And I thought it was interesting that our previous director, Roger Clark, was leading the charge on revising it this time around. So that's that's kind of fun. Both director and I had an opportunity to meet the Lieutenant Governor Honorable Elizabeth Dowdeswell in Renfrew a couple of weeks ago now, and what a pleasure that was. Just a lovely person. You certainly know she was used to talking with children. She read them a story. She answered all their questions, and some of them were interesting questions. But she did a great job, and Meredith was there too. Sorry, Meredith. It was really fun and a lovely opportunity to meet her. And just closing out with following up on Pino's comment about the Winter Games. Certainly, congratulations to all the schools and students and administrators and volunteers who were involved in that. I know Trustee Dobson, you were involved in volunteering at that. Can you say a word about that?
Oh, it was great. I did the hockey. I scored the championship hockey game and the finals in the hockey game on Saturday night at Renfrew at Mattaway Park was amazing. And the talent of those kids is incredible. And then I was also did all day scoring for wrestling and fellows. And again, just to see the camaraderie and the ability of some of those kids for 13 years old was absolutely amazing.
Yeah, that's great. Well, thank you for that. Appreciate your time for sure. So that's the end of my report as well. And I know that our student trustees are virtual with us today, but I'll look forward to hearing their report as well. So I'll turn it over to you, Taylor and Eva.
Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and get us started off. So during February, Taylor and I have both been working to adjust to our new semesters and prioritize our studies during this busy time. We are extremely grateful that we had the opportunity to attend ACO's Board Council Conference. We networked with student trustees from across Ontario. Our sessions focused on adaptability and personal development as a representative of students. As PBC Regional Representative of Southern Ontario, I ran 2 different breakout sessions to catch up on what the region has been up to recently. Furthermore, during working group breakout sessions, I attended equity and inclusion sessions. Within these groups, the concept of intramural so that everyone is included. We also took a look into different policies board for sexual abuse staff and students. I'm feeling so inspired after other student trustees are doing roles and we're excited for what's to come for public education and more specifically our school board. Taylor is making this conference a success. She helped run many different activities and sessions that were enjoyed by many. She was also responsible for being the photographer of this conference, to which she did amazing at and gave us all photos of memories that will last a lifetime. Overall, this conference was beneficial for me, and I'm going to pass to Taylor now.
Hi. So I'm going to be very, very honest. I've been very busy since the conference, and so I didn't have time to sit down and write an update. So I'm just going to give a quick verbal one. So as Ava said, this past conference was a huge, huge success. Speaking from the terms of executive council, we heard so much good feedback, not only from, the student trustees who attended, but the adults who attended and the guest speakers who attended, things like that. It was a huge success. More recently, we had a student senate meeting last Thursday, which sadly was online. But during the meeting, we talked about many different things. Things like our goals for environmental sustainability. Next meeting, we actually have Kristen Riddell and Bill Murray coming to discuss with our student senators. And more, speaking of faster terms, we do have our student trustee elections coming up April 13th. So the 9th, which is next Thursday, Ava and I will be hosting 2 sessions that are basically student trustee informational sessions that anyone can come to, ask questions, learn more about the role. And hopefully we have a lot of interested participants. So, I can leave with a bang and Ava can welcome a great new student trustee. But I think that's it for my verbal update. I do apologize for not having it there. But if anyone has any questions, feel free to ask.
That's great. Thank you, Taylor. And thank you, Ava. Anybody have any questions or comments? Yeah, I appreciate the update on Senate too. I was sorry I wasn't there and it was virtual. I guess I could have joined you, but I didn't.
No worries.
Anyway, thank you so much. That's great. OPSPA. So just to give you an update, as I mentioned, PES Public Education Symposium was the end of January. And then there was an OPSPA Board of Directors meeting last weekend. So with that, Kim, I know, said she would do a bit of an overview of the Thursday of the Public Education Symposium. Do you want to do the Board of Directors at the same time, or what would you prefer, Kim?
I can do, I'll do the, maybe the Board of Directors meeting after.
Okay, sounds good. So
Do that,
you want to go ahead with the Thursday?
Sure. The first speaker was Rhoda Muse, the Secretary General for the Canadian Commission for UNESCO. And she talked about the global impacts of the pandemic and the academic, socioeconomic, mental and physical impacts on children, and of course, learning loss around the globe. I believe her slides are available online on OPSPA's website. She talked about commitments made at the Transforming Education Summit. There was 7 of them. One of the ones that kind of stood out to me was connecting every child and young person to digital solutions, which of course we're working on. We're working on all of them, but that was one that stood out to me. You can look at kind of in the slides all the specifics for each thing. Then the next speaker was Chief Cadmus Delorme from Cowessess First Nation. And he was actually a really great speaker. Probably one of the highlights of I guess it wasn't a weekend, but the symposium. If you ever get a chance to hear him speak, I highly recommend. I don't know if anyone else has seen him speak, but he talked about truth and reconciliation, and spoke about a new approach, to empowering the Indigenous worldview of child welfare reform. In 2021, Cowessess First Nation became the first to control their child welfare system. And he just talked about the successes with that. And then he had some book recommendations, which I'm working my way through. I can send them out if anyone's interested in that. Then there was Rules of Order with Lori Ludnick. And for me, it was a lot of information as a first-time trustee. So I did save the slides and presentation just to kind of reference as I go along. She recommended Robert's Rules in Brief, which I believe that we are getting copies of. Not sure. I think it was Robert's Rules in Brief that we're getting looking at getting copies of for everybody. And then there was the Right to Read Ontario Human Rights Commission, Patricia de Greer, who spoke about that. The Human Rights Commission Right to Read inquiry and what led to that. There was some videos of the kids and parents talking, just kind of that led to the document, which is all available on their website as well. And then we had a break for a bit and had the opening ceremonies, because I guess that was the pre-symposium. And what was it? Stephen Lecce spoke. There wasn't any new things really said. There was some questions and just highlighting some different things that the government was doing as well. Hopefully that's a good rundown of the first day.
Oh, that's great, Kim. Thanks very much. Could you circulate those books that Chief Cadmus Delorme was recommending? I know I wrote them down as well, but he was an excellent speaker. Absolutely. If you ever get a chance to hear him, he's well worth listening to. So that was good. Appreciate that. And yes, I know we had talked about ordering those Robert's Rules in brief for us. So we'll get on that hopefully. For Friday, Leo has given me his report, so I will review it quickly with you. He talked about the keynote speaker was Nicholas Christakis, who's author of Apollo's Arrow on the theme of after the pandemic. And the following points reflect the main focus of his presentation. Statistical data was reviewed, including the number of deaths occurred per day at the height of the pandemic was 4,200 per day in the US as compared to 1,000 per day in Canada. The effects of the pandemic on high school students in the US, in which 9% of high school students in 2021 tried to commit suicide and 19% of high school students in 2021 thought about committing suicide. So it went from 9 to 19. He discussed the labor market implications of COVID and the shortages we are facing, given that people have been choosing early retirement rather than work with COVID. The implication of this is most impactful when applied to emergency and health service workers, such as nurses, paramedics, with potential to undermine critical services. In 2 household families with children, there was a trend for one parent to stay home, with the implication that there was another cause of attrition. The next speaker, Dr. Paul Corrier, spoke from an Indigenous viewpoint on teachings from the land. He described the concept of AKI. I didn't go to the session, so I have no idea what this was about. An AKI, an Ojibwe word meaning earth, which includes the land, water, air, and its spirit. He asked the following questions, which was followed by small group discussion. What is land? What does it mean to you? How do you use it? Do your schools use it? After lunch, Leo attended a panel discussion titled School Boards Experiences Implementing Promising FSL Solutions, which had Superintendent Renald Buzno as a panelist. It was very informative, and Renald did an excellent job representing Renfrew County and our successes. The last presentation of the day was Jason Leader, who talked about crisis communication. And he was interesting. If you talk about talking fast, anyway, I'm sure he has an attention deficit disorder because he never stopped. He just moved everything. Anyway, he said that everyone lies and to get the facts. Simple strategies for crisis communication. Be first and be fast. So this is crisis communication, remember. Be first, be fast, have the dominant share of voice in the news cycle, get it right, accuracy matters. Show you're in control through words and actions. Monitor, measure, and adjust. And steps to follow with a critical issue: solve the problem through board meetings, getting advice, etc. Communicate the solution and focus on the future. Get back to what matters: positive, proactive communications. 5 key principles for the organization spokesperson is be prepared, plan for the win, you are the message, talk to the audience, and stay in command. Lastly, he said, if you in parentheses, the school board don't stick together, then you hang apart. So that was interesting.
Cool.
So as a board, we need to stick together or we hang apart. He was very, very interesting. And then I did a quick report on the Saturday of the Public Education Symposium. So the first hour of Saturday was spent at regional meetings. So each of the 5 regions in the province had their own regional meetings. We only had an hour, so we didn't have much time. We had to fill 2 vacancies. The education policy individual, the 2 vacancies appeared because the ones who had been elected last June either chose not to return as a trustee or were not reelected. So there was vacancies. So Rachel Prinzen from from Macy's Prince Edward is the new education policy person, and Tiffany Lloyd is the OPSPA. I'll get this right. So the Student Trustee Association and the Public School Board Association liaison. So there's one from each region. And we also confirmed our regional meeting date of Saturday, March the 25th. So I hope you'll all put that in your calendar because all trustees are invited to this regional OPSPA meeting. It's going to be held in Canada at a new school that I can't remember the name of. Kristen probably knows it off the top of her head. But we are meeting there on Saturday, March the 25th, and you'll be getting agendas and reminders about that. But everyone is welcome and encouraged to attend. I think it's always great. We get the 5 districts in the East region together, so there's lots of networking and opportunity to share. At our regional meeting back in January, we also spent a bit of time talking about the role of the regional council and some thinking about the strategic plan for OPSPA. So the second and final session of the conference was a panel who were asked a variety of questions. And the panelists included 2 directors, one from the English Public Board and the other from the French Public Board, 2 executive directors, Stephanie Donaldson from OPSPA and Isabelle Girard from ASEPA, which is the French Catholic or the French Public Board organization, as well as Deputy Minister Nancy Naylor. So she was there as well. So a few of the topics that discussed, just to give you a bit of a sense, and there were quite a variety of questions. Some of the topics discussed was violence in the classroom. And one of the quotes that I noted was, and I don't know who said it, but the violence is the outcome of people who have nothing to lose. I thought that was an interesting quote to think about. The topic on mental health, Deputy Minister advocates with Ministry of Health to build up the capacity for mental health supports, needs support for staff as well as for students. Equity, diversity, and inclusion. Polarization is not new. Trustees have a responsibility to speak up and step up and not allow incidents to be normalized. Public confidence. Have your eye on the most vulnerable in our society. Try not to get swayed by the squeaky wheel, which may in fact be those who are privileged. So that's it. I thought that was an interesting comment as well. Data collection. And I know we talked a lot about the importance of data to support what we're doing. Participation is lower than we would like. Focus on information from our data, identity-based data, not just race-based data. How we collect data is important. Are there other organizations also collecting data we should be partnering with? Environmentalism in the curriculum, new science curriculum, grade 5 to 9, Shazam's focus on green industry, civics careers, curriculum's been updated. Working with public health, find out what their governance mode. Is it different across the province? The public health units, I think, have varying governance and methods of working depending on where they are and what unit they are. So interesting to find out more about that. What motions are done there and how can schools participate or be involved? Artificial intelligence, not surprised that came up. GPT. Need to be alert to this and how it can be used constructively because we know that they're going to be out there. Research regarding teachers leaving for another career. Talked about I had written down 7 PD days. Do they have more than 7 PD days?
6 is enough.
Anyway, just doesn't, maybe I have the wrong number, but they talked about that being
194 days, 7 PD.
7 PD days. So the comment was 7 PD days are not enough. So that was one piece. And then modernization of the entire system. This is the deputy talked about this, so I really paid attention to that. Modernization of the entire system. Should we revisit the 194 days? Is there a new reality? Should there be more flexibility? Partnerships. Need to look at changing policies and structure. more summer programming. And that was the deputy talking about those. So those are things obviously being discussed in the ministry. So I guess we get to stay tuned for that. So those were the 3 days, very jam-packed, lots of good speakers, lots of great conversation. And Kim, I'll come back to you because you were at the Board of Directors meeting last weekend that I was not at. So if you can share a little bit of that as well, that would be great.
Yep. So I sent out a summary of what happened, the summary that was sent out to me. And I'll just kind of highlight maybe some of the speakers that were there. We had some great speakers. So someone from the Center of Excellence for Black Student Achievement was there through the Toronto District School Board. And she talked about a few things. In addition to land acknowledgement, they also do an ancestral acknowledgement. So she gave us an example of that, which was interesting. We also listened to the Black Anthem, which is how they start their sessions. And the center is a fulfillment of a promise that there was a problem and the community came to them in 1971 was when it first started. And they finally voted to open the center in 2020, which of course with the pandemic, made things a little more difficult, but they have some great successes. She spoke about, they have 22 staff. And then some of the quotes from the kids, one that stood out to me was, one of the kids said, "I just want to be happy like everyone else." So I thought that was one thing that stood out. And some of the groups that she does, she has a reading group for Black girls who read Black authors. And you can find some more information on the website and sign up for their mailing list and newsletter. Sorry. Then Ken Jeffers did a presentation on misinformation and controversy, talked about some of the things that have come up, critical race theory and trans rights seen as a threat to some. His whole presentation is in the email, I believe, as well. We talked about a few different things. Sorry, I'm just reading through my notes. And one of the things, some of the things that have come up, I think it's come up for some of us as well, talking about the community asking about litter boxes in schools. That's meant to dehumanize the trans community. And then he talked about as well the difference in homophobia versus transphobia, that gender identity and gender expression and sexual orientation, and the differences there, and just kind of some of the stuff that's come up as well. Let's see. So that was all on Friday night. For Saturday, we talked about a few, Ted Doherty from the Ontario Education Services Corporation spoke a little bit about what they do. They're a nonprofit. They don't have any employees. They contract everything out. They do things like work on rising energy costs for school boards and that kind of thing. It's a very packed 2 days. Then there was, they talked a little bit about Advocacy Day. Great feedback from those who attended. They're looking at doing it as an annual thing. I don't know if that was the first one they've ever done in November.
No, it was the third one, Kim, actually.
It was, oh, okay. Because they did talk about doing it annually, so I wasn't sure if that was the first one or not, but and just having to switch around the meetings too, because the MPPs don't sit on Fridays, so they have to do it kind of on Monday and switch around the meeting a little bit. Let's see what else. They there was the Coalition for Children and Youth Mental Health. I sent out the document. I got 2 copies of it that I'll bring at the next meeting. But just some things that came out of that, needing more community funding in mental health rather than just in schools. They're also advocating for mental health in the community. So when they say, you know, you need some extra help, that there's services there for the kids, for the students beyond just the school. They had kind of like the school can do the first couple tiers, but it needs to be beyond that. So that was part of the document. We also talked about French as a second language, expanding and growing, dealing with difficulties such as teaching shortages. One thing they talked about was encouraging boards to offer schism in education with French as a second language option. I don't know if that's a possibility within our board, but that was one thing they talked about. There's some resources on how to do that. And then there was the strategic plan survey that I sent out as well. They're trying to get 100% compliance or in filling that out to get as much information from all the trustees as possible. And then there was also, sorry, reading through my notes. One of the things we had to talk about as well was safety. I talked about it a little bit before with the trustees, but some of the boards had talked about having a lot of hate directed at them, and people who oppose a lot of the equity policies that have been put in more recently. A lot of the boards have looked at security and keeping their boardrooms safe, and just having those safety discussions around the meetings in case that ever became an issue. So there was a lot of discussion around that with the different boards. And I think that was pretty much it. The next meeting is April 28th and 29th. And I think is there always a link to for people to be able to watch the meeting as well, or is it just for?
It's just for board of directors.
Okay.
Who have the link.
So it's just that summary and then the minutes that come out as well, if anyone's interested in knowing more, kind of thing.
Yeah, I think Kim sent those out to the trustees and maybe to Meredith yesterday, and in that was the presentation by Ken Jeffers, which is certainly, I've heard from others too that it was an excellent presentation. So, okay, thank you very much, Kim. Appreciate that update. Glad you could go. That worked out really well. So thank you very much. If anybody has any questions, you can follow up with Kim afterwards. Okay, go ahead. Her hand up.
So I'm not sure if anyone saw Taylor's comment in the comment section, but just to build off of her, this suicide can be an extremely sensitive topic and it can be triggering for many people. So I do believe there should be a content warning before the mentioning of those statistics, especially since this is being recorded, just to allow viewers to be aware and decide whether or not they feel comfortable hearing about this information.
Yeah, no, appreciate that, Ava. Thank you for bringing that to our attention. Very helpful. Okay, on to correspondence. There was a letter from the District School Board of Niagara that would have been in your package with regards to student representation and talking about supporting student trustees putting forward motions, but not having a binding vote. They could put them forward in second. So that was one that came forward to us. And as well, I received another one yesterday from Avon Maitland District School Board. They just sent a letter to Minister Lecce as well, talking about the special incidents portion funding that it had been, it has not been appropriately allocated as it was raised and then pulled back and hasn't been adjusted since. So that was just raising some attention to that. I do have a couple of things under other business. Meredith, I'll maybe call on you first to talk about the PIC survey and the Valentine's campaign. Would you mind doing that?
Yeah, I'd be pleased to. And if you don't mind, I'm just going to also give a shout out to for the Pino's presentation tonight. Actually, at 7:00 is the Indigenous Speaker Series next speaker. And if anyone's interested, I can forward you the link. I signed up for it and I'm looking forward to that. Our Parent Involvement Committee is fairly active this year and we have a great chair. And she has asked about sending out a survey to parents to gauge some feedback on how the school board can better engage parents in being active in their children's education. We know that studies have told us that when parents are more engaged and set high expectations and communicate with their schools, that we see the success of students as an outcome. So Pino looped me into this early on when I started, and just this morning we launched a thought exchange, which, and I'll read you the question, but before I do, what we also did was, because in communications, as you said, Susan, data is really important. And so we make choices based on some assumptions. And I wanted to piggyback on this thought exchange survey to ask parents, what are the different social media platforms that they're using in the traditional media? What are their preferences? How do they want to be communicated with by schools, by the school board, and also just a bit of an awareness piece about some of the different social media and other media platforms that we use, like Twitter and whatnot, and YouTube, frankly, for these meetings, so to promote that subtly. So then we get to the main question. There's some demographic questions as well. We get to the main question, which is, I will read to you here. Oh, I didn't have it in here. Sorry. Anyways, the main question is basically what I said. How can parents better be engaged? And so then what happens is, parents will make their comment. Other parents can comment on those and rate them. What we also did is we created a video of the PIC chair here who explained it to people. So at our senior admin meeting, one of the things that was covered was universal design for learning. And so we tried to incorporate that in this survey. I will just say that thought exchange, we know can give us a lot of varied comments, and some of them are not necessarily on topic or relevant. And so we do monitor the thought exchange to ensure that it is appropriate, and we don't want to limit positions that we don't agree with necessarily, or that one doesn't agree with, but it has to stay so that it's not harmful or any of those things. So we are monitoring to make sure that that is the case. And the exciting thing, I think, for the parents in particular is that they can bring, that Thought Exchange is really good at preparing a presentation that they're going to look forward to bringing to the board with what are the outcomes, what do they learn from parents, as well as to senior executive. So taking this and not just making it a survey that goes out there and then parents feel like nothing happens with their input, that their input will come back, will be presented, and then recommendations will be made. So the April 3rd meeting of PIC is when that when the report's going to be out, and then recommendations will be made at that time, and those will then be brought to the trustee table, as well as to senior executive. I will just transition from that over to the Valentine's campaign by saying that when we sent out the thought exchange survey, I added on a little PS in the end because we don't want to be reaching out to parents constantly. So we need to use our outreaches to the maximum. We don't want to dilute the message on the one hand, but we also don't want to be sending too much that they ignore things. And so I added a PS to say, thank you so much to everyone who contributed to our Valentine's Day campaign for the Student Support Fund. We raised almost $4,000. And then a little plug that if you hadn't yet, or that you can always top up at School Cash Online. And so, as I said to you in the email, but I'll say here publicly as well, because as we know, we're being recorded, and hopefully lots of people are watching this at home. That this was a wonderful campaign, and it was sort of a first attempt to show and to see how when we use sort of a minimal amount of investment and use things that are at our disposal, like email and the email list and data that we have, that we can send out. It was just 2 simple emails, I think fairly well crafted, to let people know that this student support fund exists. Take the onus off of principals to be the ones to be identifying people in need, which, we have discussed. Some people fly under the radar and hide that. And so this was an effort to equalize that, as well as letting people know about some of the mental health supports, because we know February is a challenging time of year. And then ask people to donate and support. And so we then followed that up with a second email on Valentine's Day itself. I think those 2 emails, like the first one got us about 1,800, and the second one got us close to 4,000, just under. So it shows that just sending one time isn't enough. It needs to be a campaign and an effort. And I will be interested to see with the PS on this, as well as when I sent to staff earlier today, the program list, I also said a PS there. Thank you for staff that signed up and that gave as well, because we know our staff did as well. And we don't have that data yet. But what I think is important is that we want to minimize the staff time that we spend fundraising and just benefit from that money. And so I was really happy that, while some boards were being faced with phasing out Valentine's, that we used it as an equalizer for equity, as well as to raise money for kids, and use it for the real purpose was to share love and spread that love. So I was really happy with it. We may do something again towards the end of the year with a message of, it's time for kids to go to their end of year trip. Let's help them, help a kid go on these trips, or let's help with the fee. Or we might wait until next year at the November timeframe of cyber giving. Anyways, I don't want to take up any more time, but thank you so much for the ability to give you that update verbally as well.
No, that's great, Meredith. Thank you so much. Any questions for Meredith? I think both those things were very, very interesting to know, the PIC survey piece as well as the Valentine's campaign.
Oh, I did forget one thing. Sorry, if I may, just to say, because I see my note to myself. The other great thing that I will highlight is that we got some earned media from this. And so without even sending out a press release, the Renfrew paper picked this up and ran that we were doing this Valentine's campaign, which was a note to self that anytime we do something, we want to capitalize on it as much as possible. So it's not just enough to do the thing and just to do it once. We need to do a campaign, but we also need to promote that we're doing it to the wider community. And so there's that reputational enhancement that we get at the same time.
Yeah, no, that's a good point, because you're right. Some boards were saying, perhaps we shouldn't be honoring Valentine's Day. So this was picked up because we were doing just the opposite of it. So thank you for that. The other comment, I'm sure everybody had a chance also to see the excellent article in the Leader recently as well, that talked about the new trustees, the returning trustees, and our new staff. So that was an excellent promotion too. So thank you for doing that. I just have two quick things and then we'll wrap up. We did have a quick discussion around our next meeting, which originally for committees was March the 7th. I think at this point we have decided that we can squeeze it in together with the March 28th meeting. So that meeting might be a wee bit longer, but it does give you a break between now and March the 28th, which is a whole month. Oh my gosh, a whole month of holiday from meetings maybe. So make a note of that. And I know that we have tried to get a date where all the trustees are here to take a photo. So hopefully March the 28th, the weather will cooperate, Kim, and you can join us in person. And hopefully the other trustees will be there as well. So we will attempt to do another board photo on the 28th of March. So I know that'll be in the reminder as it goes out. So keep that in mind. And the last thing is just, again, a reminder about our regional Ontario Public School Board Association meeting. Please mark March 25th on your calendar. It's a Saturday. It'll probably run from like 10 till 2 or 10 till 3. But it's a great opportunity to meet trustees within the 5 boards in the Eastern region. I get to tour a new school. Just have a chance to chat and talk more about what all the boards are doing as far as the good, the bad, and the ugly, but also talking about the priorities for OPSPA. So lots of great discussion, and we look forward to that. So make sure you mark it on your calendar as well. Anything else for the good of the meeting? Hearing none at 5:45. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I need a motion for adjournment, and I'm sure Trustee Gannett, seconded by Trustee Morris. All those in favor? Thank you for a great meeting.
Thank you.
Safe travels.